In Consumer Corner, we take a look at trends and products creating a buzz here in China. On today's show, we'll discuss how China's fashion-conscious shoppers have been turned off by soaring prices for spring clothing. A recent snowstorm aside, spring is still in the air here in Beijing. As the city's residents emerge from their winter shells, clothing retailers are decorating their stores with the newest styles for the season. The colors look great, but many Chinese are holding back on purchases because of sticker prices that would eat up a huge portion of their monthly income. Upper middle-class workers in Beijing often earn around $1,000 per month. But this spring, prices on jackets at many of the middle-of-the-road stores are hovering around $500. Those prices used to be reserved for coveted foreign brands, but recently even Chinese brands have gotten in on the practice. Sales representatives for Chinese domestic brand Jiggle Studio told the Beijing Evening News that their store no longer sells any clothing for less than 1,000 yuan, about $160. That move is a reflection of these companies' judgment of Chinese consumer mentality. In a country where many wealthy consumers have little experience assessing quality, high prices are often equated with quality. That's a lesson that's been reinforced by the occasionally confounding shopping habits of Chinese consumers. Traditional economics teaches us that price and quantity purchased are inversely correlated. Essentially, as price goes up, sales go down. But many Chinese luxury consumers have turned that relationship on its head, demanding more of a good the higher its price is. Chinese brands looking to gain something in the way of prestige have taken that trend to heart, raising prices in hopes of also bringing up their profile. However, inflated price tags are no guarantee of quality. On social media, many Chinese shoppers have been complaining that dresses priced at hundreds of dollars look and feel identical to those that can be bought from street vendors for just $10. But it's not just high-end brands that have seen price markups. Up and down the value charts, shoppers have been confronted by rising prices. In some wholesale markets in Beijing, prices for t-shirts have doubled or even tripled compared to several years ago. Even low-quality knockoffs of Zara and H&M clothing cost nearly 100 yuan or $16 a piece. That broader trend is likely a part of what some are calling the end of cheap China. In a popular book, Chinese market analyst Sean Rain called attention to what he deems a monumental shift in China's relationship to its own consumers and the rest of the world. Much of that shift is rooted in rising demands for wages from Chinese workers who have seen productivity outstrip wage growth for decades. Now costs are rising throughout the supply chain, from factory seamstresses to China's immature logistics networks. Despite slow and unreliable operations, China still pays a much higher percentage of GDP into logistics networks than other countries. Those costs are especially apparent in the clothing industry. As items move from factory to the retail shelf, they pass through many hands, with truckers, buying agents, and delivery agencies all taking a cut. Local media reports that en route, the cost of a piece of clothing can multiply by a factor of 10. And once clothing has made it onto retail shelves, prices will likely see another major uptick. That's particularly true in major cities like Beijing, where rental costs for storefronts have been on the up. As if that weren't already enough, China's Cotton Exchange database showed a 30% increase in polyester and synthetic fiber costs. As that fabric makes its way into China's summer garment lines, prices are likely to see yet another jump. In hopes of shortcutting many of the logistics and retail costs, shoppers have turned to online clothing retailers in droves. E-commerce sites have boomed as customers gain trust in established retailers at places like Taobao and Tmall.com. China's web community has been buzzing about what's behind the spring price hike in clothing markets. Weibo user Wu Yuehua lamented the undervalued RMB and the way foreign firms benefit from it. Quote, China exports cheap clothes to other countries in exchange for a few pitiful dollars. Then the same kind of clothes are packaged to look like high-end fashion and sold to domestic consumers for ridiculous prices. Another netizen pointed out that sticker shock at brick-and-mortar stores is just a function of new dominance of e-commerce. Quote, online retailers have dominated the low-end market, forcing department stores to focus on high-end sales. With inflation constantly on the up, this kind of thing is going to become the new norm. Another Weibo user had enough when they read the woe is me lamentations from high-income earners quoted in articles on the subject. Quote, people make $1,500 per month working entry-level jobs in state-owned enterprises and still complain about not having enough money to buy new clothes. Should the rest of us just go naked? Poster Xueye Dongben blamed rampant corruption and special perks for state sector employees as the source of price inflation. Quote, when I asked who would pay over $1,000 for clothes, a sales clerk laughed and said ordinary workers like you and me can't afford it. Those who buy them all pay with shopping credits from their companies. Corruption hasn't only pushed up housing and consumer prices, it's made the lives of ordinary people miserable. Unlike most other Weibo users, one Chinese netizen proved optimistic that prices would go back to normal sooner or later. I strongly believe that high prices will turn away customers, and retailers who fail to adjust them accordingly will go bankrupt. Those who come out unscathed in the competition are generally very good brands. But before we reach that equilibrium, many people would still have to suffer. Despite low inflation numbers put out by the Government Statistics Bureau, most Chinese people remain convinced that inflation is a huge problem in the country. That could either be the result of unreliable government statistics or the fact that even low inflation has outpaced wage growth in China.